So I'm gonna have to start this one off with a warning because this video isn't like the rest. And no matter how self-aware you are, I can pretty well guarantee that you're going to feel called out by the end of this video. And you're probably not gonna see it coming. Because today we're not talking about the obvious stuff. We're going deeper into the low-key, often overlooked ways your nervous system has been trying to keep you safe. Sometimes for years. Welcome and welcome back. My name is Christina, and I help people untangle the mess that's left behind after narcissistic abuse. And if you're struggling to move on, I invite you to take my free quiz to figure out what might be holding you back. So now let's dive into the first unusual coping mechanism you might recognize, and that is over apologizing, even in safe relationships. So you ever catch yourself saying sorry for something that's completely harmless? Like asking a question or taking too long to text back, or just existing in someone else's space. You apologizing is not you being too nice. That's survival mode when you've been emotionally abused, especially by someone who made you feel like your needs were a burden. You learn to apologize before there's even a problem. You start using the word sorry kind of like a buffer, like a shield. And it's your nervous system bracing for impact, even when there's no threat. And the wild part is this habit really kicks into high gear when you finally find someone safe. And that's when you start thinking there's something wrong with you, because you would think that being in a healthy relationship, romantic or otherwise, would quiet that old wiring, would calm things down. But sometimes it makes it louder, because now you really don't want to mess it up. Now it's like we have to apologize for everything, just in case they might change their mind about us. And then comes the shame spiral. So why am I like this? Why can't I just relax? But the truth is that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just how you've been wired. And it's a sign that your nervous system has had to work overtime to keep you safe. So when you catch yourself doing it, just ask yourself whether you really have anything to apologize for. And if the answer is no, but the apology slipped out anyway, as sometimes they do, the fact that you self-reflected is still a win, and this all gets easier over time. So the second thing we're going to talk about is becoming hyper-independent to the point of isolation. So at first, it probably felt empowering when you stopped asking for help, if you can even remember a time when you did. And I bet people probably even praise you for your strength. They think you can handle anything, and they're right, with one exception. You can't handle the crushing blow you believe is inevitable when you rely on someone else, especially for emotional support. And listen, I get it. I've always been hyper independent. And part of it is fear of being a burden. And part of it is fear of disappointment. And I don't even know which part is stronger. But either way you look at it, we're talking about fear and not strength. It just happens to look like strength to the outside world. But the truth is that after emotional abuse, needing someone can feel dangerous. You learned, consciously or not, that dependence equals vulnerability. That if someone has access to your needs, they have the power to manipulate them. You learned that leaning on the wrong person could cost you your sanity, your safety, and your sense of self. And these were lessons hard learned. So you became the one who never asks for help or support. And you're never going to be the one to ask someone else to show up for you, because maybe someone made you feel like you weren't worth showing up for. And listen, this one will help you survive for a while, but it doesn't really work as a life strategy because it keeps you at a distance. And it's really difficult to form deep and valuable relationships with people from a distance. So how do you change this one? I'd say just start small. Lean on people you know are safe with small things, and then try working your way up from there. So the third survival strategy we're going to talk about here today is replaying fake conversations in your head to win arguments. So you know how this one goes. You're washing dishes, you're driving, or maybe you're brushing your teeth, and suddenly you're back in that conversation. You know, the one where they twisted your words, or they said the thing you still can't believe they got away with. But this time in your head, you respond perfectly. You're calm, you're sharp, and you are unbothered. And you say exactly what you wished you'd said back then. And for a moment, it feels good. It feels like closure. But here's the problem. It's that you're sure you need to have this conversation in real life. Because this time, They can't weasel their way out of it. This time, they'll have no choice but to apologize or to admit that you were right after all. And even though this is the 57th time you've had this aha moment after replaying the conversation on your own, and you already know that things went south the 56 other times you had this conversation in real life, somehow this time it's going to be different. Because this time you got them right where you want them, except you don't. What we need to understand here, and more than understand, remind ourselves in these moments, is that this person isn't giving you the resolution you want because they don't want to. And as good as it feels for you to feel like you got it down this time, it feels just as good for them to slip through your fingers once again. Make no mistake about it. This is their hobby, and they take great pleasure in it because they know how much it upsets you. And even after you realize this, the conversations in your head don't end, because this is your nervous system looking for closure. You're convinced that you either need justice or to finally make things make sense, or maybe both. But all you get is an endless loop of overthinking until you decide enough is enough, and you do the work to regain control over your mind. This is the first step to recovering from any kind of emotional abuse, because you can't even think about healing when your mind won't let you think about anything but pain. So now let's move on to another survival strategy that I know some of you are going to feel called out on. And this is getting really into true crime. And yeah, I said it. I know you thought it was just your hobby or some kind of morbid fascination that you couldn't explain. But there's actually a reason abuse survivors are attracted to true crime, even though many of them hate violence in real life. So here you are, holed up in your house on a Friday night watching Investigation Discovery. And listen, I'm not saying that everyone who likes true crime is an abuse survivor, but there's a reason this connection makes sense. After emotional abuse, your brain is constantly looking for patterns, trying to make sense of the chaos it once lived through. And true crime offers some structure. You get timelines with motives, and as part of the audience, you can easily spot the red flags. There's a clear, this is what happened, that survivors rarely got in their own stories. And even though it's vastly different from your own story, it feels validating, like proof that yes, people really can be charming and dangerous. And yes, your instincts were right, but it goes deeper than that. Watching true crime can feel like a weird form of emotional rehearsal. You're subconsciously studying danger and taking notes. Maybe part of you is trying to make sure that next time you'll spot the danger sooner, even if next time never comes. And here's the wildest part. Sometimes it's not even about fear. It's about power. Because when the scariest things are on your screen, you're not the powerless one anymore. And of course, this isn't the same for everyone. Some survivors feel anxiety or like they're being re-traumatized by watching true crime, especially if the stories are too similar to their own. But if you've ever wondered why you can't stop watching stories like these, this might be why. Maybe you're just trying to understand the darkness that you've already lived through, and in some small way, rewrite the ending. So by now we've talked about some things that apply very much to some people and not to others. This next strategy that we're going to look at pretty much happens to everyone. And that is you start noticing toxic patterns, but you don't always know what to do about them. So this one really sneaks up on you. One day you're listening to a friend talk and your stomach kind of drops. It's in the way they guilt you, or they never really hear what you're saying. Maybe it's in the way you always feel smaller when you're around them. And just like that, the light flips on and you know what you're dealing with. But then comes the hard part, because now you're seeing it everywhere. In old friendships, family conversations, work dynamics. It's like your brain is screaming, it's happening again. And some people you'll cut off without blinking an eye. You don't even need to explain it. You just know you're not putting up with this anymore. But with some people, it's messier. So maybe it's your sister or your childhood best friend. Maybe it's your mom who shows love through control. And so you start doing these quiet little gymnastics in your head. Like, it's not that bad. Or they don't mean it like that. Or the ever popular, it's just the way they are. But your muscles still tighten when their name shows up on your phone. Your tone changes when you talk to them. And after every interaction, you're left feeling drained. And you're definitely not making it up. It's not all in your head. You're just not ready to deal with it yet. And that's okay, because sometimes healing looks like walking away. And sometimes it looks like staying still just long enough to find some steady ground. And the fact that you can even identify that the relationship isn't fully healthy is progress. So do not beat yourself up for not taking action you are not ready for yet. You're in charge of what you do and do not put up with. So here's another one that I know some of you will relate strongly to, and that is turning your trauma into material. Some people cope by crying, that, just having that emotional release. And some cope by overthinking. A lot of people do both. But there are some who turn their trauma into humor, and they write punchlines. Now, I'm not talking about me, of course. I'm probably the least funny person I know. But there are plenty of survivors who are absolutely hilarious. And you just know it's because they've had to choose laughter even when they're crumbling, when everything was falling apart. So a dark sense of humor is one of the most underrated coping mechanisms. Because listen, it actually works. You take something awful and you shape it into something clever, something you can control. And you find rhythm, timing, and absurdity in it all. Comedian Tig Notaro put it very well when she once said, "I don't have jokes, I have trauma, but it works." And if you've ever laughed in the middle of telling a story that should have wrecked you, you get that it's not about denying the pain, it's about reclaiming it on your own terms. Because if you can make someone laugh at the thing that nearly broke you, then just for a second, you're the one holding the power. And that feels a lot better than pity. So what this humor thing does is it causes people on the outside to see you differently. So they might hear your humor or your cracking jokes and think, well, okay, this terrible thing happened, but they're fine. Or maybe they'll think you're cold and detached. But either way, you're fine with it because this isn't about them. It's about you. So the next thing we're going to talk about is probably one of the saddest coping mechanisms, and that is getting uncomfortable when someone's actually kind to you. So you'll tell yourself all day that you want someone safe and someone calm. Somebody who listens, respects you, and doesn't play games. But when someone actually shows up like that, you don't trust it, and you absolutely overthink it. You look for any reason to pull away. So you might tell yourself that they're too nice, or maybe they're too boring. But what you're really feeling is your nervous system sounding the alarm. Because somewhere along the way, your body started confusing intensity with love. It got used to unpredictability, mixed signals, and the high of being pulled in and then pushed away. And now when someone is just kind, you want to run from it. And maybe you can't even explain it, but it just feels wrong. And that doesn't mean that you're not ready for something healthy, even though it kind of feels that way. What it means is that the part of you that had to stay guarded hasn't felt this kind of safety before. Or maybe it's been a long time. And that part of you is scared to believe it's real. And while we don't necessarily want to let that part run the show, it's definitely worth paying attention to. Because if you don't, you'll keep pushing away the very thing that you've been asking for, and you'll just do it on autopilot. All right, so if you haven't related to any of these coping mechanisms so far, buckle up because this one might well describe you. And that is acting like you're untouchable. So this one is not always obvious from the outside. Now, obvious would be like risk taking, like skydiving and things like that. So maybe you're not jumping out of planes or running into burning buildings. You're just doing things that kind of don't make sense. Like maybe speeding with a suspended license or getting in someone's face when you know they could hurt you. You're pushing buttons you probably shouldn't be pushing. And when people try to warn you, you brush it off. You say, you know what, it's fine and I've been through worse. And maybe you have. But that doesn't mean you're going to be okay this time. Because underneath all of that, there may be a part of you that is looking for the punishment. Because if you look at your behavior, you're still walking right up to the edge. And even though it might feel a little bit exciting, more than that, it feels familiar. Because deep down, maybe some part of you doesn't believe that you deserve to feel safe. So essentially, you're putting yourself into risky situations. And maybe they are big things, maybe they're small things. But there are situations that could go badly for you. And if this is you or someone you know and love, you know that the reward is not worth the risk. So kind of like the example of speeding with a suspended license, right? What is the reward to that? It's getting to go faster, right? But is that worth the trouble that could come your way if you were to get caught? So if you're feeling called out right now, you probably have a lot of people in your life who are constantly telling you that you should not do this or you should not do that. They're constantly trying to get you to step away from the edge, whatever that looks like for you. But understanding that this for you might be a coping mechanism can really help you get to the root of how to find safety in actually being safe. So now I want to talk about another very common coping mechanism, and that is turning self-improvement into a full-time escape plan. So here you are, you're reading all the books, you're listening to the trauma podcasts, and you're journaling about your triggers like it is your full-time job. And at first, it was really helpful. You've noticed that you are more aware and you have words to describe not just what happened, but how you feel about what you've been through. But you're starting to feel that pressure to hurry up and heal already. Like if you can just do enough, learn enough, or fix enough, you will finally be free. One day you'll wake up and this will all be behind you. But here's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes the obsession with healing is exactly what's holding you back. You might even start judging yourself for not having healed yet. Like you should have outgrown this pain already. And before you know it, healing becomes another form of self-abandonment because you're not actually meeting yourself where you are. You're trying to outrun the part of you that's still hurting. And listen, there is nothing wrong with personal growth. And I do believe that it is a lifelong process. Just be sure you're giving yourself the time and the grace you need to actually heal from this. And understand that more isn't always better. Sometimes it's just more. So if some of these hit you harder than you expected, that's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that your nervous system got a little creative to help keep you safe. And now it's trying to figure out what safety actually feels like. And if you've left the narcissist, but you still don't feel free, like you're waiting for permission to fully breathe again, watch this video right here where I break down exactly why that is. It might explain more than you expect. Just be sure to like this video if you haven't already before you go, and I'll see you next time.